What happens if a different Viltrumite gets sent to Earth instead of Omni-Man? Would they destroy the planet immediately? Or somehow make the same strange choices Nolan did? Because once you really compare Nolan to the rest of the Viltrumite Empire, you start realizing just how unusual he actually was. Let's start with the absolute last person you would ever want making first contact. Conquest. Conquest was never built for infiltration. The man wouldn't know subtlety if it hit him with a Viltrumite warship. To him, the very idea of blending in is a joke. He's a sledgehammer, and every planet in the universe looks like a nail. So in this timeline, Omni-Man's whole secret identity phase never happens. Conquest doesn't get a civilian day job, learn the language, or spend years pretending to be a smiling superhero. The moment he arrives on Earth, he drops straight from orbit into the middle of a major city. Entire blocks vanish on impact. And while people are still trying to understand what just happened, Conquest is already standing in the crater, cracking his knuckles and waiting to see what the strongest things on the planet are going to do about it. Naturally, the original Guardians of the Globe answer the call, but here's where things change. Nolan ambushed the Guardians because he knew they were a legitimate threat if they coordinated properly. Conquest doesn't care. He fights the Guardians head-on, in broad daylight, taking on Earth's strongest heroes all at once. And we have to be realistic here. Conquest does not hold back. He doesn't spare them to train or test their potential. He brutally and systematically tears Earth's greatest defenders apart, laughing through the entire bloodbath. By all logic, the war should end right there on day one. Earth is defenseless, and the planet should already belong to the Viltrumite Empire. But humanity doesn't just roll over. Cecil Stedman hits the absolute panic button, and the Global Defense Agency throws everything they have at Conquest. Experimental orbital lasers, bio-engineered kaiju, Sinclair's Reaniman, unstable superhumans, anything they think might leave a scratch on this guy. And that's when something clicks inside Conquest's battle-rotted brain. If he glasses the planet right now, the fun ends. He gets one good afternoon of slaughter, and then spends the next few centuries babysitting a dead world. But Earth isn't just another target anymore. It's a planet filled with desperate lunatics willing to build suicidal weapons just to scratch his armor. An endless revolving buffet of violence. So Conquest doesn't conquer Earth in the traditional sense. He turns the entire planet into his personal hunting ground. He ignores governments, militaries, and politics entirely, almost daring humanity to keep building deadlier weapons and stronger superhumans just so he can enjoy breaking them later. And the absolute most ironic part of this timeline? Conquest actually ends up protecting Earth from outside threats. When the Flaxans, the Sequids, or random alien armadas try to invade, Conquest tears their fleets out of the sky. Not because he suddenly values human life, but because nobody else in the universe is allowed to play with his toys. But transitioning from a mindless conqueror into something closer to a twisted protector doesn't happen overnight. At first, Conquest struggles with the boredom. He spends years waiting for challengers, fighting the same weak opponents, and battling the Viltrumite instincts telling him to just glass the planet and move on. But eventually, something changes. During one of his brutal, blood-soaked fights, he meets a human woman with enough guts to spit blood in his face after he tells her to stay down. And to Conquest, that is fascinating. Because on Viltrum, weakness means death. But humans keep getting back up. They fight when they should run and survive things that should kill them. And somewhere along the way, Conquest falls for her in his own violent, hyper-aggressive way. They have a child, and for the first time in his life, Conquest trains someone not to serve the Empire, but because he genuinely wants an equal rival. So when the Viltrumite Armada finally arrives on Earth expecting a neatly conquered planet, Conquest just cracks his knuckles, spits on the ground, and tells them to back off. These humans are his. They still haven't managed to beat him yet, and he's not about to let some arrogant, desk-bound generals ruin the greatest fight of his entire life. Through pure, unfiltered bloodlust, Conquest accidentally becomes Earth's most terrifying and unbreakable shield. If a brute like Conquest can be swayed by a good fight, then what happens when the Viltrumite sent to Earth is someone obsessed with discipline, weapon mastery, and bloodshed? Enter Thula. She is an enforcer to her absolute core. She respects honor, combat, and absolutely nothing else. Politics, stealth, and civilian integration are completely off the table. So Thula skips the superhero act entirely. Picture her landing right in front of the United Nations, slamming her massive hairblade into the pavement and demanding a trial by combat against Earth's greatest warriors. Naturally, the Guardians accept the challenge. They think their teamwork and numbers give them the advantage. They are dead wrong. Thula cuts through them with terrifying, surgical precision, then leaves their bodies out in the open to show the world that resisting her is mathematically pointless. But here's where things shift. Because Thula only respects strength, discipline, and execution, humanity doesn't fully surrender. Instead, Cecil takes the Global Defense Agency underground, kicking off a brutal, decades-long guerrilla war. And strangely enough, Thula loves it. She watches fragile humans fight back with ambushes, traps, and pure, unfiltered spite. And slowly, she stops seeing them as insects. She starts seeing warriors. Eventually, Thula reshapes the entire planet around her own twisted version of Viltrumite honor. She creates a brutal global military system inspired by an alien form of Bushido. The strongest human fighters are given the chance to join her elite vanguard. And by giving people something to fight for, Thula turns humanity's greatest threats into her most loyal samurai. She becomes Earth's terrifying shogun, strict and merciless, almost impossible to break. So when the Viltrumites finally arrive to claim the planet, Thula refuses to let them slaughter the warriors who earned their place beside her. And for the first time, Earth isn't protected by compassion or morality, it's protected by honor. But what happens if the Empire sends someone who genuinely tries to follow Nolan's playbook and completely fails at it? That brings us to Lucan. Out of all the Viltrumites, Lucan is one of the few with a genuine capacity for deep attachment. We eventually see that side of him much later in the story. His real problem is something else entirely. Lucan has absolutely no charisma and zero poker face. He tries his hardest to run the Omni-Man script. He picks a fake human name, gets a boring day job, and pretends to be Earth's smiling superhero. But Lucan is still a frontline Viltrumite, a brute. He completely fails to understand human emotion, social cues, or restraint. So instead of looking heroic, he comes across like an emotionally unstable tank, desperately trying to act normal. As a husband, he's awkward, distant, and constantly irritated. As a superhero, he's even worse. Low-level criminals don't get arrested. They get accidentally turned into red mist. And because Lucan's acting is complete garbage, Darkwing figures it out first. Robot eventually comes to the exact same conclusion. So instead of waiting for Lucan to conquer Earth, the heroes launch a massive preemptive strike. And unlike Nolan's clean ambush, this turns into a chaotic, dragged-out war. Lucan technically wins, but he gets absolutely brutalized in the process. Broken, bleeding, and barely holding himself together, Lucan disappears to recover in complete secrecy. And that's where the timeline finally shifts, because while hiding out on a remote farm, Lucan gets taken in by a completely normal human family that has absolutely no idea what he really is. They nurse him back to health without asking for anything in return, and for the first time in his life, Lucan experiences something the Viltrum Empire never gave him: kindness. Because to the Empire, Lucan was never a person. He was a weapon, a disposable meat shield built for the front lines. But on this quiet little farm, people actually care whether he lives or dies. And somewhere along the way, something inside him breaks. He looks at the fields, the quiet life, the family that took him in, and realizes he absolutely hates the Empire. He hates the endless cycle of conquest, war, and bloodshed. For the first time in centuries, Lucan doesn't want to fight anymore. He just wants peace. So when the Viltrumite Armada finally arrives in orbit, Lucan doesn't fight them to protect governments, freedom, or humanity itself. He fights to protect his farm, the family that took him in, and the quiet life he built there. And through pure exhaustion with the Viltrumite way, Lucan accidentally becomes a good man. Of course, not every Viltrumite gets a redemption arc, because if Anissa gets the Earth assignment, Earth is completely screwed. Anissa is cold, highly pragmatic, and fiercely loyal to the Empire. More importantly, she has absolutely no patience for lesser species. She isn't playing superhero, putting on a cape, or pretending to care about humanity. Her superiority complex completely destroys any chance of her ever seeing humans as equals. So instead of conquering Earth through brute force, Anissa does something far more dangerous. She helps us. She walks straight into the Pentagon, cures major diseases, stabilizes the climate crisis, and introduces enough Viltrumite technology to permanently solve world hunger. Humanity practically hands her the keys to the planet with a smile on its face. But once Earth becomes dependent on her, the hammer drops. Anissa enforces brutal, zero-tolerance laws with absolutely no hesitation. To her, humans are nothing more than resources for the Empire, future breeding stock to expand its reach. And unlike Nolan, Anissa never emotionally connects to humanity. To her, having a child with a human is nothing more than a biological obligation. The second that child can walk, they start training. No bedtime stories, warmth, or real affection, just brutal conditioning designed to create the perfect Viltrumite soldier. And the worst part? Anissa genuinely believes she is helping Earth. She sees humanity as weak, self-destructive, and hopelessly inefficient. So in her mind, a totalitarian Viltrumite regime is mercy. Under Anissa, Earth becomes a sanitized, high-tech utopia where survival is guaranteed, but freedom no longer exists. Then there's General Craig, the ultimate battle-hardened military strategist, cold, calculating, and obsessed with efficiency. If Craig gets the Earth assignment, this is not an infiltration mission, it's a military occupation. And unlike the others, Craig doesn't rush anything. He spends months sitting in high orbit, completely undetected, quietly studying Earth's communication systems, hidden military facilities, and every known superhuman on the planet. Then one afternoon, he makes his first move. Craig destroys Earth's nuclear silos, orbital defense platforms, and major military bases in a matter of minutes. No speeches, no invasion warning, no dramatic battle. Craig removes humanity's ability to fight back before anyone even realizes the war has started. He rips Earth's fangs out without ever throwing a single punch. But here's the strange part. Craig actually develops a form of attachment to Earth, just not an emotional one. He doesn't fall in love with humanity. He falls in love with the results of his mission because above all else, Craig respects strength. Pure, undeniable strength. So instead of simply ruling Earth, he begins building a highly controlled breeding program, using Earth's strongest superhumans to create an army of powerful Viltrumite hybrids. And as those soldiers grow stronger and start rivaling purebloods, Earth stops looking like a temporary assignment. It becomes Craig's masterpiece, his ultimate military achievement. So, when the Empire eventually decides Earth has become too rebellious and orders the planet destroyed, Craig pushes back aggressively, not because he cares about freedom, humanity, or peace, but because he refuses to let High Command destroy the greatest military project he has ever created. He doesn't become a hero, he becomes Earth's warden, a ruthless commander protecting the single most valuable asset in the Viltrum Empire. But something important happens right after this. Quick shout out to Samuel for supporting the channel. If you want to be next, comment, I subbed. Now let's look at the absolute nightmare scenario. Grand Regent Thrag. Now realistically, Thrag would never be sent on a standard infiltration mission. He runs the entire Viltrum Empire himself. But let's say he discovers humanity's genetic compatibility long before Nolan ever gets assigned to Earth. Thrag would never trust something that important to anyone else. He would handle Earth personally. And once you really analyze his character, this outcome is completely hopeless, because Thrag is nothing like Nolan. He has absolutely zero capacity for human integration. Thrag views the universe through one idea only: Viltrumite survival. To him, Earth is not a civilization, a culture, or even a planet. It's a biological resource. So Thrag arrives on Earth with a small group of his most elite warriors, decapitates the world's governments within hours, and immediately begins a massive forced breeding program to rapidly rebuild the Viltrumite population, because after the Scourge virus, that is all Earth represents to him, a way to restore the Empire. And unlike Nolan, Thrag never changes, not even slightly. He is too powerful, too consumed by his own ideology, and far too deep inside his own god complex. Even if every superhero, supervillain, and military force on Earth joined together in one final stand, Thrag would slaughter them without breaking a sweat. Under Thrag, Earth stops being a human world almost immediately. Human culture, history, and resistance disappear. Within a single generation, Earth becomes New Viltrum. Humanity is systematically assimilated, bred out of existence, and replaced by billions of loyal Viltrumite hybrids. Thrag would never integrate with humanity. He would erase it and use the remains to rebuild his empire. But when you step back and really look at all these timelines, it reveals the tragic irony at the center of Invincible. Sending Nolan to Earth was the only reason the Viltrum Empire ever lost, because Nolan's greatest strength as an infiltrator was also the one flaw that doomed the Empire. He knew how to become human. Conquest might have protected Earth through obsession. Thula might have spared humanity out of respect. Lucan might have wanted peace. And Craig might have defended Earth as a military asset. But Nolan was different. Out of all of them, he was the only one capable of genuinely loving humanity. And if you enjoyed this kind of breakdown, click this video right here. Trust me, you're probably going to like this one too.